because I don't want anything unfair, improper, or prejudicial to get into the record. I'm not sure what Mr. Shapiro is going to read, but we're dealing with a media source. One of the things that Ms. Clark and I have enjoyed thus far about this proceeding is the ability to present evidence in court in a lawyer-like fashion. So, Your Honor, if we may we approach so that we can discuss this in a more professional manner?
I mean, please have the walkie-talkies off in court. Anything that we're going to talk about is going to be recorded. Are you asking for like a sidebar on this?
Yes.
All right. Then I'll see the lawyers in chambers first with the reporter, please.
Thank you.
Conference in chambers, the court has denied a motion to strike Mr. Camacho's testimony. Ms. Clark.
Point turn over pages numbered L126 to L128. These are further lab notes concerning the evaluation of evidence for the purposes of DNA analysis. I'm handing them to Mr. Yeoman.
All right. Call your next witness, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. The people call Ms. Karen Crawford.
Face the clerk and raise your right hand, please.
You solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in the cause you're not pending before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. I do. State and spell your name for the record.
Karen Lee Crawford, KarenLeeCrawford.
May I inquire?
Good morning, Ms. Crawford.
Good morning.
Please tell us what you do for a living.
I work at Mezzaluna.
And what do you do there?
I'm a bartender and I manage the restaurant on Sundays.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to try and sit forward and keep your voice up a little. It's hard to hear you. Comfortable? And could you tell us again, what do you do at the Mezzaluna?
I bartend and I manage on Sundays.
And where is the Mezzaluna located?
It's on the corner of San Vicente and Gorham in Brentwood.
Is that near to the location of Bundy and Dorothy, or Bundy and San Vicente?
Yes, it is.
How long have you been working there?
I've worked there for 1 year.
Were you employed there as the bar manager on June 12, 1994?
Yes.
And do you recall that being a Sunday?
Yes, it was.
Now, since it was a Sunday, what were your duties on that day?
I got in at 3:30. I reconciled the books from the day before, set up for the evening. I run the floor, and at the end of the evening, I run the reports and I close up.
What time did you get there on June 12th?
3:30.
Show you a couple of photographs. People's two identification. Can you tell me if you recognize who's shown in that photograph?
Yes,
Who's that?
that's Ron Goldman.
and showing the people's three. Do you recognize who's shown in that photograph?
Yes, that's Nicole Brown.
Now, the person you identified as Ron Goldman. How did you know him?
I worked with him.
Did he work at the Mezzaluna with you?
Yes, he did. He was a waiter.
And how long had he been working there? How
For
long?
about 4 months.
And that's as long as you knew him?
Yes.
How did you know Nicole Brown?
I had seen her in the restaurant occasionally.
Did she come to the restaurant fairly often?
As far as I know, she did. I only saw her in the course of a year 3 or 4 times.
During those 3 or 4 times that she came, did you ever speak to her?
A couple of times just to say hello or to help her with something.
Enough to know her voice.
Yeah.
On June the 12th, 1994, can you tell me if you saw Ron Goldman at the restaurant?
Yes, he was there.
Was he working?
He was working, yes.
And did you see Nicole Brown there?
Yes.
Do you recall what time she arrived?
Her party arrived between 6:30 and 7 that evening.
When you say her party, she was not alone then?
No.
How many people was she with?
She was in a party of 10.
Did that party include children as well as adults?
Yes.
At some point, did you notice at what time Nicole and her party left?
They left, I would say, between 8:30 and 9.
Can you tell us if you remember what she wore that night?
Yes, she was wearing a black halter dress.
Was it short?
It was mid-thigh.
Now, so Nicole and her party left between 8:30 and 9.
Yes.
At some point after they left, did you receive a phone call?
Yes, I did.
Did you recognize the voice of the person that you spoke to on the phone?
Yes, I did.
And who did you recognize that voice to belong to?
It was the voice of the older woman in the party, in Nicole's party.
And the woman said something to you?
Yes.
Based on what she said, what did you do?
I looked around the restaurant, and I also looked outside for a pair of glasses.
Did you find it?
Yes, I did.
Where did you find it?
I found them outside where I had seen them getting out of the vehicle. They were in the gutter, a few inches away from the curb.
So you saw Nicole and her party arrive,
Yes.
and you saw them get out of the car.
Yes.
And is that where you found the glasses?
Yes, I found them right there.
And what did you do with them when you got them?
I went back to the phone, told the woman I had found the glasses, and I put them in an envelope.
Did you ask her something?
I asked her if she would be coming by the restaurant that evening to pick them up.
What kind of envelope did you put those glasses in?
A business-size envelope, a long rectangular envelope, white.
Did you write anything on it?
Yes.
What did you write?
I wrote Nicole Simpson, and below that I wrote prescription glasses.
Did you seal the envelope?
Yes, I did.
Now, so then you asked if she would be picking up the glasses that night. She gave you a response to that, I take it.
Yes.
And based on her response, you put those glasses into the envelope, wrote on it Nicole Simpson prescription glasses, and sealed it.
Yes.
And then where did you put the envelope?
I placed the envelope behind the bar.
Did you get any other phone calls that night?
Yes.
How long after that first phone call from the woman in Nicole Simpson's party did you get the second phone call?
I would say 5 minutes.
What time did you get the first phone call?
I would say around 9:30.
And so the second phone call would be,
9:35 or so, yeah.
did you recognize the voice of the person on that second phone call?
Yes, I did.
Whose voice was that?
It was Nicole's voice.
And you had a conversation with her?
Yes.
Did she ask you to do something?
Yes.
What was that?
She asked me if I could get Ron on the phone.
And what did you do?
I went over to where Ron was sitting and I told him that Nicole was on the phone and she wanted to speak to him.
What did he do?
He took the call.
Did he stay by you as he spoke on the phone?
Yeah, I was standing near him when he was on the phone.
And they had a conversation for a while?
For a couple of minutes, yeah.
After they had that conversation, what happened next?
I gave him the glasses.
So you had the conversation with Nicole, after which you gave the phone to Ron, who spoke to her, and then
Yes.
you gave Ron the glasses.
Yes.
Did you see when he left the restaurant?
Yes, I did.
And when was that?
I would say at about 10 minutes to 10.
Do you know what exit he used when he left the restaurant?
He used the side exit that goes out to Gorham.
Is that exit near the bar area in your restaurant?
Yes.
Do you happen to know who was tending bar that night?
Stuart was tending bar, Stuart Tanner.
Your Honor, I have here a series of photographs where they ask that they now be marked as People's 4.
All right.
At this time, Your Honor, to ask this uncovered photographs that are labeled on that as student F. Going to the defense. Ms. Crawford, if you can you see this photograph?
Yes.
I'm directing your attention specifically on People's 4 to the photograph labeled as F. Can you tell me if you recognize what that is?
It's an envelope.
Does it appear to be the kind of envelope you used to put the glasses into on the night of June the 12th, which you labeled Nicole Simpson prescription glasses?
Yes.
I have nothing further.
Mr. Shapiro.
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning, Ms. Crawford.
Good morning.
The glasses that you found, did you find them on the blacktop?
They were just a few inches off of the gutter, yes, on the asphalt.
When you went to call Ron Goldman to the phone, where was he?
He was sitting on table 101, which is the very first table to the left of the front entrance.
Who was he with, if anyone?
He was sitting with John and Richard. John DeBello, the manager, and Richard Arbolino.
Richard,
Arbolino?
What were they doing?
They were having dinner.
Did you notice anything of an alcoholic beverage at the table?
No, I don't recall.
Thank you, nothing further.
Any redirect?
No, thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Crawford. I'm going to remind you that until you have been officially excused from giving testimony in this matter, you are not to talk about your testimony with anyone. Thank you very much, except for the lawyers. Next witness.
People call Mr. Stuart Tanner.
Your Honor?
Yes.
Photographs up to the
No, that's about-
All right. face the clerk and raise your right hand, please, sir.
You do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in the cause not given before this court shall be the truth and the truth and nothing but the truth. So help you God. You can see it. State and spell your name for the record.
Stuart Tanner, Stewartanner.
Thank you. You may inquire.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Tanner.
Good morning.
Can you tell us where you work, sir?
Mezzaluna and Brentwood.
And where is that located exactly?
11750 San Vicente.
Is that near the intersection of San Vicente and Bundy, or Bundy and Dorothy?
Yes, it is.
How long have you worked there as a waiter?
Since November of '93.
Do you have some other duties as well as being a waiter there, sir?
I bartend occasionally, basically Saturday, Sunday, and Monday evenings.
Showing you photographs that have been previously marked as Peoples 2 and 3. First of all, Peoples 2, sir. Do you recognize the person shown there?
Yes, I do.
Who is that?
Ron Goldman,
And the person shown in Peoples 3?
Nicole Brown.
With respect to Ron Goldman, how did you meet him, sir?
We were co-workers.
He worked at the Mezzaluna also?
Yes, he did.
In what capacity?
As a waiter?
Had you known him before he worked there?
No, I did not.
You met him there then?
Yes.
And Nicole Brown, how did you get to know her?
She was a customer at the restaurant.
Now, were you working there on the night of June the 12th, 1994?
Yes, I was.
In what capacity were you working there on the night of June 12th?
As a bartender?
Did you see Ron Goldman there that night?
Yes, I did.
Was he working?
Yes.
Did you see Nicole Brown there that night?
Yes, I did.
Did you happen to notice whether she was alone or with another party?
Nicole was with her family and children.
And how large was that party?
A group of approximately 10.
Did you make some plans with Ronald Goldman for later that evening?
We were supposed to get together after work and go out.
And where was that?
We were going to the Baja Cantina
Which is located where?
in Marina del Rey.
What exact plans did you have to meet up that night?
Basically, Ron got off work before me and was to call me at work, or I was to call him when I got home. I got home from work that night and was tired, and I hadn't received a phone call from him as of yet, and was going to wait for the call or just going ahead and go to bed.
Now, the location of 875 South Bundy, you know where that is, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that location on the way, if you leave the Mezzaluna restaurant, would that location be on the way to the Baja Cantina or your house?
Yes, it would be.
Did you see Ronald Goldman as he left the restaurant that night?
Yes, I did.
Did he say something to you?
Said he'd talk to me later.
And when he left, sir, was he still wearing the waiter's uniform?
No, he'd taken his tie and vest off. And he had a white dress shirt, black pants, black shoes.
So he had that part of the waiter's uniform on?
Correct.
Black shoes, black pants, and a white shirt?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you recall, did you know where he lived?
I knew that he lived within walking distance of the restaurant. And that's about it. I didn't know the exact location. I knew the basic direction that he took, but not the exact address.
So when he left the bar that night and said he'll talk to you later, did he leave by the front or the side exit?
The last time I saw him, he was walking towards the front door. However, I did not see him leave through that door. I did not see him leave through the side entrance either.
So you didn't actually see him leave the restaurant?
Correct.
You just had that last conversation with him?
Right.
What time did you get home that night, sir?
Somewhere around 11:30.
And did you get any phone calls from Ron?
No, ma'am.
I have nothing further.
Mr. Shapiro?
Thank you very much, Your Honor. Mr. Tanner, did you give a statement to the police regarding incidents relative to your testimony today?
I don't understand the question.
Were you interviewed by anybody from the police department regarding what you saw
Yes,
this
sir.
night? And did you give a statement to them?
I believe so.
Did they write that down while you were talking?
What they wrote, I don't know.
Were they writing something down while you were talking?
Yes, they were.
Did you ever tell the police that Ron volunteered to take the glasses to Nicole at her house?
Not to my recollection.
May I show you a statement form dated 6/13/94?
Sure.
Like you say.
Okay.
Do you recall making a statement to the police the afternoon after this incident at about 5 o'clock that Ron volunteered to take the glasses to her house?
This statement is in the report, but Ron never told me that he had volunteered to take the glasses.
So the report by the Los Angeles Police Department, as far as you're concerned, is incorrect.
I wouldn't say that it's incorrect. I just say that there were a lot of people speaking at that time, and that this may have been written down
And if it was
in
written-
my name,
And if it was written down, it was something that you didn't say.
quite possibly.
Quite possibly you didn't say it, or quite possibly you did say it.
Quite possibly I didn't say it.
Thank you. Nothing further, Your Honor.
Ms. Clark, anything on redirect?
Yes, thank you. Mr. Tanner, when the police were interviewing you on the date of June the 13th, about 5 o'clock, were they asking you what you knew about the events that had transpired the night before in the restaurant?
They did.
And did you in fact learn from Karen Crawford that there were glasses that Ron was going to take to Nicole Brown that night?
Objection, moving and suggested.
Sustained.
Your Honor, this goes to counsel's question as to whether or not he may have made that statement, and I don't know how it could be leading at this point after counsel's already shown the statement to the witness.
The objection is sustained as to the form of your question.
At the time you spoke to the police on June the 13th, had you already spoken to Karen Crawford about the events that transpired with Ron Goldman and Nicole Brown in the restaurant on June the 12th?
I had spoken to Karen that day. And you have to understand it's very foggy that day and several days that followed that. The night that Ronald left, I did not know that he had a pair of glasses with him to take to Nicole's house. I may have found out later after speaking with Karen, or I may have just found out from other people. But the night that it happened, I did not know that he had those glasses on his person.
So what you're telling us is that you did not know of your personal observation or knowledge that he was taking the glasses to Nicole.
That is correct.
But you may have learned that when talking to people later the following day.
Yes, ma'am.
Then in response to police questioning as to what you knew about the events that transpired with Ron Goldman and Nicole Brown on June the 12th, could you have told the police what you knew without limiting yourself to what you personally observed.
Objection, Your Honor, that constitutes violation.
Sustained.
Could you have told that to the police?
Objection, that constitutes violation.
Sustained. Do you know whether you said that to the police, sir?
I don't remember. I really don't.
Either way, yes or no? You might have, you might not.
Exactly. Two people that you knew are dead. I mean, what do you remember from that? You just know they're dead that day.
Thank you.
Mr. Shapiro, anything further? Thank you, sir. You may step down. I do want to remind you, please do not discuss your testimony with anyone until you have been completely excused from this proceeding.
Thank you.
You may, however, speak to the lawyers concerning your testimony. Next witness.
People call. Pablo Fuentes.
Face the clerk and raise your right hand, sir.
solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in the cause and opinion before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. State and spell your name for the record.
My name is Pablo Fenves. Last name is Fenjves.
Sir, I'm going to ask if you can speak up a little bit so that everyone can hear you. Ms. Clark.
Thank you. Sir, directing your attention to the date of June the 12th, 1994. As of that date, can you tell us what street you lived on?
I lived on 862 Gretna Greenway.
Gretna Greenway? Is that yes?
Yes.
And where in relation to 875 South Bundy is that?
Bundy is one block east, and we share a common alley.
Is it, what part of your condo faces that alley that you share with 875 South Bundy?
The master bedroom, the kitchen.
Is that at the front or the rear of your residence?
It's at the rear of my residence.
How long have you lived there, sir?
2 years.
If you look out the back, your bedroom window, are you able to see any part of the property of 875 South Bundy?
Yes, I'm able to see the whole north side of 875 North Bundy.
Now, as of the date of June the 12th, 1994, did you know someone by the name of Nicole Brown,
No, I did not.
or where she lived?
I did not.
Directing your attention, sir, to the evening of June the 12th, 1994, Sunday night. Can you tell us where you were in the evening, sir?
I was home at 8.
Can you tell us what you were doing at about 10 o'clock?
I had just turned on the Channel 5 news.
The Channel 5 News?
Yes.
And where were you watching television at that time?
Upstairs in the bedroom with my wife.
At some point, while you were watching the 10 o'clock news on Channel 5, did something distract you?
Yes, about 15 or 20 minutes into it, I heard a dog barking, a sort of a plaintive wail.
Now, had dogs barked in that neighborhood before, sir?
Yes, but this was a pretty persistent barking that just wouldn't stop.
You described it as a plaintive wail,
Yes,
so it was an unusual sound of bark to you.
right,
And that was at about 10:15 to 10:20?
yes.
Did the barking stop or did it continue?
Well, about this time, I stopped watching the news and went down to my office, and I did a little work, and I didn't come back upstairs till about 11 o'clock.
At the point that you went downstairs to do some work, was the barking still going on?
Yes, it was.
Did you come back up from working at some point?
Yes, I did. I came back up at around 11 o'clock.
Where did you go when you came? We said you came back up. To where did you come back?
Back up to the master bedroom.
And at 11 o'clock, can you tell us whether you still heard the dog barking?
Yes, the dog was still barking, and I remember going over to the shutters and taking a look out toward Nicole's building, and I saw some lights on upstairs, but, of course, I couldn't pinpoint, where exactly the dog was.
So you were looking out towards where you heard the sound coming from of the dog barking,
That's correct.
and you looked toward Nicole's house.
That is correct.
Did it sound like the same dog that you'd heard barking
Yes,
earlier,
it was.
10, 15
It was
or so?
definitely.
I'm sorry?
It was definitely the same dog.
What point did you go to sleep that night, sir?
I don't know, I went to bed about, a little after 11, and I read for a while, and the dog was still barking, and, eventually I turned out the light and went to sleep.
And at the point that you went to sleep, was the dog still barking?
As I recall, yes.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I have nothing further.
Mr. Shapiro? I'm sorry, Mr. Ullman?
Mr. Finchbus, you watch the Channel 5 news every evening?
Generally, but sometimes I watch the 11 o'clock news.
And is that a one-hour newscast?
Well, I don't know. I usually watch the first 20 minutes of the news, and then it sort of gets into areas that I'm not that interested in.
I see. So you regularly stop watching after about 20 minutes?
About 20, 25 minutes, yeah.
Okay. And it was about 20 or 25 minutes then into the newscast that you first heard the dog?
No, I think
Objection.
it was about 15 or 20 minutes into the newscast that I first heard the dog.
All right, excuse me for just a moment. If one of the attorneys does make an objection, I would ask you to just wait for a moment so
Okay.
ruling. And I assume you were withdrawing your objection anyway.
I am, thank you.
And did you hear the dog continue to bark as you were watching the news?
Yes, I did.
For about how long?
5, 7 minutes, and then I left.
Now, you did not look out the back of your condo to view the Simpson residence at that time?
At that point, I did not.
You went downstairs, did you say? Or
Yes, 2 floors down, I have my office.
I see. Did you continue to hear the dog bark while you were in your office?
Well, at that point, I was sort of focused on my work, so I pretty much ignored sound if it was there.
And I believe you said at about 11, you came back upstairs?
That's correct.
And that was the point at which you looked out the back?
Yes, sir.
Now, did you say you looked out the back through the blinds?
Well, we have wooden shutters, those storm shutters. I opened them up and took a look out.
Did you at any time go outside onto a rear porch to look at the premise?
No, I don't believe I did.
Now, did you give a statement to the Los Angeles Police Department after this event took place?
Yes, the following morning, Monday morning, they came to my house and asked me a few questions.
All right, so this interview took place at your home.
Yes, it did.
Did you tell the officers of the Los Angeles Police Department that you went outside on the rear porch to look?
No, I don't recall telling them that. I think they misunderstood what I was telling them at that point.
Have you had an opportunity to look at the statement that they prepared?
No, I haven't.
May I approach?
Yes.
No, I think there's a few mistakes there.
There's a few mistakes there.
Just a minor mistake regarding the Jeep.
Okay. Are you saying you did not tell the officers that you went out onto the porch to look?
I did not go out on the porch to look, no, sir. And I do not recall telling the officers that I went out on the porch to look. I said I looked out through the porch, open the shutters, there's a porch beyond the porch.
Now, when you looked through the shutters, did you observe a Jeep parked in the driveway?
No, I think they misunderstood that because they asked me to take a look at the house from my house. And we went outside, and I said, there where, you know, a Jeep was parked there a few days ago.
I see. So you did not tell the officers that on the evening of this occurrence, you observed a Jeep parked in the driveway?
No, sir, I did not.
Now, you indicate you went to bed at about 11:30?
I went to bed a little after 11,
All right.
and I read for a while.
And the dog continued to bark?
Yes, sir.
How long did that barking continue?
Until I fell asleep, which may have been 11:30, 11:40.
So the dog may have continued barking even
Yes,
later
sir.
than that?
That's correct.
Now, is it unusual for a dog to bark that long in the neighborhood?
Yes, sir, you seldom hear, I mean, you occasionally will hear a dog barking, but certainly not at that length and at that pitch.
And did you at any time contemplate going out to see where the dog was or whether anything was wrong?
No, I did not.
Why not?
Well, it was a couple of hundred yards away, and I assumed that, you know, one of the neighbors, it would probably be 3 times louder, and they would be able to pinpoint the exact location. I'd have to say, you know, I was near Dorothy and Bundy. That was the area that the barking was coming from.
Thank you. Nothing.
Ms. Clark?
Thank you, Your Honor. No redirect.
Thank you very much, sir. You're free to leave. I do want to remind you that until you have been completely excused from this matter, you are not to discuss your testimony with anyone except the lawyers in this matter. All right.
People call Mr. Stephen Schwab. Your Honor, I believe that this witness is a few minutes away. The court had earlier indicated it wanted to take a break at some point in the morning.
Of course, we got started sort of late, but this is a little bit early, but we could take the 15 minutes now. Will you have witnesses sufficient if I did that so that we can go till 12?
I believe so.
All right. Then we'll take a 15-minute recess, or actually it'd probably be a little bit more than 15 minutes, until 10:15. I'm going to remind you that I do intend to start at that time, so please be back and ready to proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Please, the clerk, and raise your right hand.
So swear the testimony you're about to give in the trial not taken before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and everything so help you God.
I swear.
See?
Thank you.
State and spell your name for the record.
My name is Stephen Schwab, Stevenschwab.
You may inquire.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Mr. Schwab.
Morning.
Directing your attention, sir, to the date of June the 12th, 1994,
Yes.
Sunday. As of that date, sir, can you tell us where you lived?
I live on Montana Avenue. Do I need to give the exact address?
No, sir,
Thank
you
you.
don't. Did you live, was that on Montana near to Bundy?
Yes, that's on Montana between Bundy and San Vicente.
How far from the intersection of Bundy and San Vicente did you live at that day?
It's about half a block.
Do you own any pets, sir?
Yes, I have 2 pets. I own a dog and a cat.
Do you ever walk the dog in that neighborhood?
Yes, I walk the dog in that neighborhood in the morning and at night.
With regard to at night, is that a habit that you have, sir, of doing that every night?
Yes, I walk the dog every night after watching television.
Is there a particular time that you always walk the dog at night?
It varies from day to day because of the different shows that are on. Generally, during the week, I walk it at a different hour than on the weekends.
During the week, what time do you usually walk your dog at night?
I usually leave the house at 11:30. That's during the week. I generally watch the Dick Van Dyke Show and then walk my dog, and that's during the week. That's on between 11 and 11:30.
And on Sunday nights?
Well, the Dick Van Dyke Show is also on, but it's on an hour earlier. So I watch the Dick Van Dyke Show on Sunday night. I watch it between 10 and 10:30, and then I go to walk my dog.
Now, June the 12th was a Sunday, sir?
Yes, it was.
Did you watch the Dick Van Dyke Show that night?
Yes, I did.
And that was at what time that you watched that show?
I watched the show between 10 and 10:30.
Did you watch the entire show, sir?
Yes, I did.
And what time did that show end?
That ends just prior to 10:30.
Did you walk the dog that night after you watched the show?
Yes, as soon as the show was over, I got my dog, put her leash on, and took her for a walk.
So on the night of June the 12th, that Sunday night, about what time did you leave your apartment to walk your dog?
Shortly after 10:30, between 10:30 and 10:35, much closer to 10:30 then.
Can you tell us what route you took when you walked her?
Yes, I walked down Montana, and I continued along Montana. I crossed the street at the intersection of Montana and Bundy, and continued along Montana until I got to a street called Gretna Green. At Gretna Green, I made a left and walked up 1 block, made a right on a street called Gorham. I then walked down 1 block, made a left on Amherst, walked up 1 block to Amherst and Dorothy, made a left at Amherst and Dorothy, and continued along Dorothy until I came to Bundy.
Now, if you can tell us, you walked along Montana past Bundy and you
Yes.
went left on Gretna Green?
Yes.
How long did it take you to get to Gretna Green?
Well, I looked at my watch when I turned to go down Gretna Green, and that was 10:37. I remember that my dog had taken care of its business, and I was deciding whether to return home or to continue walking. And it was a nice night, so I decided to continue walking.
So what time was it about when you got to Gretna Green?
10:37.
10:37, you know that exactly?
Well, between 10:35 and 10:40. Obviously, it's not exact because I don't have a digital watch, but it was between 10:35 and 10:40.
Were you wearing a watch at all?
Yes, I was wearing a watch.
A regular watch, not the digital kind?
Not the digital. In fact, I'm wearing it now. It's a regular
Can
watch.
you show us what kind of watch that is?
Sure. It's a regular watch. It doesn't have numbers on the face. It's not a digital watch.
For the record, the witness is indicating a watch that has dots where the hours would be,
All right.
an analog watch. So at what streets did you decide to turn around and go back home?
Well, that was when I came to Amherst and Dorothy. At Amherst and Dorothy, I made a left, which would take me back home. I use this route. This takes me generally half an hour to do because I get home, and then another show begins at 11 o'clock or 11:30, so that's the route I use.
So you turned around at Amherst and Dorothy and decided to go back home.
Correct.
What happened next?
Well, I was walking down Dorothy, and as I approached the corner of Dorothy and Bundy, I saw that there was a dog at the corner. It was a large Akita, very white, and as I approached further, I saw that it wasn't with anyone. There was no one walking the dog. The dog was just just there. And the dogs, it was unusual for a dog to just be wandering the neighborhood by itself, and the dog seemed agitated. It was barking at the house on the corner.
On the corner of what?
On the corner of Dorothy and Bundy. There's a house in the corner that has a driveway, that a path to the door that comes right to the corner. And it was looking down that path and barking, which is very unusual for a dog to be barking at a house that way, but that's what it was doing.
Can you
And
describe the way the dog looked?
yes, it was a white Akita, beautiful dog. It had a collar on, and what looked like a very expensive embroidered collar of red and blue. And it smelled my dog, and my dog smelled it. And as I looked I checked the collar to see if there was an address or a tag on there, but there wasn't, so I didn't know where the dog was from. And as I examined the dog further, I noticed that there was blood on the paws.
Blood on all four paws?
There seemed to be blood on all of the paws in different amounts. There was more on some than on others, but there was blood on the paws. I noticed some blood on one of the back paws. That was the one I noticed first.
Now, what time was it when you first saw that dog?
Well, I didn't look at my watch at the moment that this occurred, but based on the path and how long it generally takes me, I would say that was approximately 10:55.
And that was at the corner of Dorothy and Bundy?
Yes, it was.
Did the dog wear a leash?
No, there was no leash. It was just the collar.
The blood that you saw on the dog's paws, did it appear to be wet, fresh, or dry?
I didn't touch the blood, so I don't really know. The dog was also dirty, and there seemed to be mud on the dog. But I didn't get any blood on my hands or anything like that, so I don't know whether it was wet or dry.
After those two dogs met each other,
Yeah.
what happened next?
Well, my dog doesn't like other dogs very much. They barked at each other for a little bit, and then I noticed by that time that no one had come. There wasn't like a block or two behind, in front of its owner or anything. So I crossed the street at that point. I crossed the street from one side of Bundy to the other, and the dog stayed with us. The dog followed us, and so knowing that this was a lost dog, I allowed it to stay with us, and I made a left at that point on Bundy, heading back towards my house.
During the time that the dog walked with you, did it continue to bark?
Yes, it was very strange. It would bark at each house as we passed. It would bark when we got to the entrance to the house, or the path leading to the door of the houses, it would bark at the houses. I had never seen anything like that before, but it would stop at each house and bark.
So as you walked down the sidewalk, you had your dog, the other one was following you, and
Yes.
every time you got to a place where a path leading up to a residence met the sidewalk, the dog would stop, look at the house, and bark?
Yes, absolutely. But the dog also didn't want to get very far from myself and my dog. It stayed very, very close to us.
Where did you go?
Well, I continued to walk down Bundy, and at that point, a police car came going in the other direction. And so I flagged the police car down to tell him that I had found this dog. And I did. I told the officer that I had found this dog that's obviously lost, and that maybe he could, call someone, find out if anyone had reported a missing dog. He said he would take care of it, and so I continued on, but the dog continued to follow me. And it followed me down Bundy past Gorham again, and then that all the way to Montana. So I turned the corner on Montana, I made a right on Montana heading home, and the cop pulled into a driveway on Montana, and we spoke again because obviously the dog wasn't going to leave my side. So at that point, I gave him my address and phone number and said that I would take the dog home and that he would call the animal control people and that they would contact me with regard to the dog. So I left the police officer at that time, continued home, and the dog followed me into the courtyard of my building, which has a pool, and up the stairs. I live on the second floor, up the stairs to my apartment. I mean, it stayed right with me.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
At that point, I went into the house, leaving the dog outside because my wife was inside, and I also have a cat, and I didn't want to freak either of them out. So I closed the door and told my wife that this big Akita had followed me home.
On the entire walk home, did the dog continue to bark?
It barked periodically, absolutely. I remember also it barked at the corner of Gorham and Bundy. It barked again. It went through a phase in which it barked, and then as I continued to walk up Bundy, it stopped and caught up with us again.
Do you recall what time you got home?
Yeah, I got home at 11:05, I remember, because Mary Tyler Moore was on at that point. It was the beginning of the show. I watch a lot of TV.
So when you got home, what did you do?
I told my wife that this big Akita had followed me home. We had helped stray dogs get home in the past because being dog owners ourselves, we're very sympathetic to it any time when the dog is separated from its owner. So I told her that, and I also told her about the police officer and the animal control people. I showed her the dog. I opened the door and she saw the dog. But again, we didn't let it into the house because we didn't want to freak out our cat by bringing this big dog in. And I got a spare leash from the closet. I have a couple of extras for my own dog. And I put the spare leash on the collar of the dog and walked back out to the front of the building to see if the animal control people had arrived yet.
So did you go downstairs or?
Yes, I went back downstairs and back out to the front of the building. And
Were you then standing outside with the dog?
Yeah, I was-
On the leash you put on it in front of the building?
I sat outside in front of the building with the leash, with the dog on the leash, and sat at the front steps and waited to see if somebody would arrive from animal control.
Did anyone arrive from animal
No
control?
one arrived from animal control.
So what did you do?
My wife came outside, and we decided to try to walk the dog back to where I had found it to see if maybe the owner was there or if that was close to where the dog had come from. And I tried to walk the dog up Montana towards Bundy, but the dog didn't want to go. So when the dog pulled back in the other direction, I noticed at that point that the dog was very dehydrated. It was panting. So I decided to bring the dog back to our courtyard and give it some water because it obviously needed water.
So when you tried to walk it back towards the location of Bundy, it pulled back away
It
from
pulled back away from the corner of Bundy and Montana. It pulled back on Montana back towards where I live.
So at that point, you took it back and gave it water?
Yes, I brought the dog back to the courtyard. I left my wife with the dog and went upstairs and got my own dog's bowl, filled it with water, brought it back downstairs, and gave the dog water. It drank quite a bit of water, and that seemed to settle it down quite a bit.
And you said the dog seemed to be dehydrated.
Yeah.
What about the dog made you think that?
It was panting. It was panting continuously.
Was it hot that night?
It wasn't especially hot that night. It was a nice night.
Would you say it was a cool night?
Generally speaking, I'd say it was a cool night.
But the dog was panting?
The dog was panting, and my wife was there. Why won't it go? Why won't it go where you're taking it? And I said, I don't know, but I can see that the dog is dehydrated. I think the best thing to do at this point would be to give it some water, because again, I didn't know at that point how long the dog had been lost. It could have been weeks for all I know that the dog was wandering and just happened to arrive in this neighborhood. So I decided to bring it back to my apartment and give it some water.
When you first saw the dog and when you were walking with the dog on the street, was it well lit where you saw the dog?
No, it was not well lit. It's a very dark corner.
When you brought the dog back home and you were downstairs with the dog, was there more light?
Yeah, there was more light.
Were you able to observe the dog then more closely, to look at his body, its legs?
I saw the dog more closely at that point.
And what did you notice, if anything, more about the dog?
Well, I noticed again that it was dirty and that there was blood on the paws.
Did you notice?
At that point, I would say that the blood was dried.
Did you notice whether there was any blood on the legs of the dog?
The underside of the dog was dirty, and again, I noticed the blood on the paws, but I didn't think that much about it. My dog has come home with a bloody paw sometimes from stepping on glass or a fight with another dog, so I didn't think that much about that, especially being that it was a lost dog. I had no idea what it had been through at that point.
So the blood on the paws didn't strike you as something to worry about because you thought it might have stepped on glass?
Yeah, except that I noticed that the dog wasn't hurt in any way. Despite that, there was no injury that I could see to the dog. The dog wasn't cut on the paws, but I didn't think much more about it, again, because it could have happened much earlier.
So you didn't see any obvious cuts on the dog to cause that blood?
There were no cuts on the dog at that point. It itself was not bleeding at that point in any way.
And did you see any blood anywhere other than the paws on the dog?
Well, again, the dog seemed dirty, especially the underside of the dog, the chest of the dog. I don't know myself whether that was blood or mud or dirt, but it was the underside of the dog was dirty.
And the legs?
And the legs. Again, I noticed the blood, and I don't remember noticing any mud, particularly on the legs. I noticed the blood.
Blood on the legs?
Yeah.
Did you ever hear from animal control?
Well, after I'd given the dog the water, I went upstairs and saw that the light on my telephone answering machine was blinking. That was when I went up to get the water for the dog. I noticed that the light on my answering machine was blinking, but I didn't stop to listen to the message at that point. And that was that would have been about between 11:25 and 11:30. Again, my TV was still on, and it was the end of the Mary Tyler Moore Show. And I noticed that the light was blinking. I came down with the water, gave the water to the dog, and told my wife about our answering machine was blinking, that we had a message. So she went upstairs and listened to the message. And the message said that the animal control people couldn't come by that night. If we wanted to bring the dog by ourselves, they would take it, but that they were closing at 12 o'clock. And so if we didn't do this quickly, they were going to close for the night.
Okay, I'm learning that. What did you do?
Well, my wife and I discussed what to do. This upset my wife because it seemed very insensitive that they were just going to close up for the night. Also, the fact that we bring it there at 12 o'clock and then the person who's there goes home, and there's no one with the dogs all night. So I went back upstairs to call the people, and I spoke to a man on the phone, and he assured me that he was the only one there, so therefore he could not come by to pick up the dog. But he told me the location of animal control, which is on Bundy in Missouri, and he said that if I brought the dog by myself by 12 o'clock that they would take it, if not that they would be gone for the night. So
What happened next?
I told them I'd see what we could do, and I went downstairs and I told my wife about that the person was going home at midnight, but they weren't going to come by to pick the dog up on their own, so that we would have to bring the dog in ourselves. And we didn't like that very much because we wanted to help the dog find its way home, and we wouldn't have known what the animal control people would do after they got the dog under the circumstances, and also because it was now approximately like 11:30. There was only half an hour to get the dog to the animal control people. So we discussed various options, one of which would be for me to, again, try to walk the dog back to where I found it, and my wife to come follow me in the car. So in case we couldn't find anyone, we still would have the option to put the dog into our car and take it to the shelter. But I didn't like that option very much because the dog was not, easily controlled, obviously, because it wouldn't necessarily walk where I wanted to take it. I didn't know if it would get in the car at all. And again, it was still dirty. I didn't necessarily want to, bring it into my car like that. So we were discussing the various options, but we had pretty much decided not to take the dog to the animal control people at midnight. At that point, where we were discussing the various options, my neighbors came home.
Can you tell us what their names were?
Yes, his name is Shukru, and her name is Bettina. And
What time was it when you saw them?
That would have been about 11:40.
At the time that they came into the apartment building, were you outside still?
Yes, we were out in the courtyard, and we were discussing whether it would be okay if maybe we could tie the dog up in the courtyard overnight, because my plan was to tie the dog up or to keep the dog with us overnight and then print up some posters on my computer, go back to the location, put up lost dog signs, and try to find the owner.
So you were outside in the courtyard with your wife and the dog?
And the dog,
When
absolutely.
Shukru and Bettina came up?
That's exactly what happened. And Shoe Crew and Bettina take care of my dog when I'm away, either on vacation or if I'm out of town for the weekend. They take care of my animals. And at that point, Shoe Crew offered to take care of the dog overnight and to leave it out in the courtyard in the morning, so that in the morning I could deal with trying to find the owner once again.
And did you give him the dog?
At that point, I gave him the dog, and I said fine. And at that point, he took the leash that I had put on the dog was still on the dog. He took the dog for a walk. My wife and I spoke to his wife Bettina for a few more minutes, and then went to bed.
And did you see the dog again after that?
I have not seen the dog again since then. That was the last that I saw of the dog.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Mr. Ullman?
Now, Mr. Schwab, when you first encountered the Akita,
Yes.
was it standing in one place, barking at one house?
It was standing. First, it noticed myself and my dog, and as dogs do, they sniffed one another, and my dog growled at it. And then the dog turned and looked up that path leading to the corner house and started barking at the house.
Okay. Was the dog ever running from house to house?
I didn't know. The dog, while I was with the dog, didn't run or walked, again, trying very hard to stay very close to myself and my dog, but stopping at each individual house and barking. There was also, when the two dogs first met, there was a little bit of barking between them, because my dog is aggressive that way and initially growled at the dog.
I see. So the dog was simply standing in one place barking when you first encountered
It
it?
was not barking when I first encountered it. It was simply standing at the corner. And I approached it with my dog. The dogs smelled each other, growled and barked a little bit between them. Then the dog, while I was still standing there, turned to look down this path and barked at the house.
I understand. And then the dog began to follow you?
Yeah, I waited at the corner for a few minutes to see if an owner would show up. Maybe the owner was a block or so behind the dog, but no one came. So I crossed the street from one side of Bundy to the other to see what the dog would do. Maybe the dog would turn around and go in the direction of its home, and I could then follow the dog back to where it came from. But the dog didn't do that. The dog followed myself and my dog across the street.
Okay. Now, is Bundy a busy street at that time of night?
Not especially busy, no. Not at that hour. During the day, it's somewhat busy, but at night, it's a quiet neighborhood at night.
Did you see any cars coming by?
I saw the police car that I mentioned that I flagged down. I did not recall seeing other cars. I'm not saying that there were no other cars that passed that night, but I don't, recall definitely, I saw a particular car.
Okay. Now, with respect to this police car, what direction was it going?
The police car, it was coming down Bundy. And it was on the other side of Bundy that I flagged it down. Therefore, it was coming from the direction of Montana. It was at that point I had crossed the street already, and it was on the other side of the street. So it was coming down Montana.
Excuse me.
Coming south?
Down from Montana.
I'm sorry. All right, I'm going to have to interrupt for just a few minutes. requests that I interrupt the proceedings to speak with him. And for the purpose of making this announcement, there was a court order that was made by the Superior Court, and I'm going to read it to you as follows. Minute order. The court has read and considered the ex parte application for emergency meeting between Supervising Judge Lance Ito and Defense Counsel and heard the argument of Robert Shapiro and Gerald Ullman in camera. The court hereby appoints Judge Delbert Wong as a special master on behalf of the court. Judge Wong is directed to accompany counsel for the defendant to recover certain items of real evidence, to place any such real evidence under seal, and return any said items to this court forthwith. The clerk of the court is directed to take the items submitted by Judge Wong into the custody of the court, pending further order of this court. The case file shall be sealed pending further order of this court. It was the determination that the Superior Court, in essence, didn't really have the jurisdiction to handle this particular matter, since this case was not in the Superior Court, it's here in the Municipal Court. Nonetheless, Judge Delbert Wong was appointed as the special master, and as the special master, he did recover apparently some items of evidence related to this matter. They are in the envelope, whatever it is in the envelope here that I'm holding in my hand. At this time, I'm going to deliver this to the clerk, and the clerk of the court will maintain the possession and control of this until the appropriate time in these proceedings, when that envelope will be opened and we'll be able to determine what in fact is inside it. I do not know what is in the envelope. I do know, however, that Judge Wong does have a report, a written report of some kind, in addition to whatever physical evidence is in that envelope therein, and we will examine that in due course. At this point in time, I suggest that we continue with the examination of the witness.
May I inquire, this is the first I've learned of this because it was an ex parte application. Is the court aware of where the evidence originated from?
I do not know anything about it.
And does the court have any information to indicate at what point we'll be able to view that evidence?
I would think that that item of evidence could be opened as a part of the court record and the proceedings in this matter. I think that we should at least conclude the testimony of the witness that we have on the stand at this point before we would do that.
Thank you very much, Ellen.
Mr. Schwab, we were discussing the police car that you encountered on Bundy.
Yes.
Just so we have our bearings, Bundy runs north and south, doesn't it?
Yes, that's basically correct.
All right. And at this time, you were walking north on Bundy, going from Dorothy up to Montana?
That's correct.
Okay. And are you familiar now with where the scene of the homicide was at 875 South Bundy?
Yes.
All right, that's between Dorothy and Montana, isn't it correct?
That's between Dorothy and Gorham.
Dorothy and Gorham. And Gorham is between Dorothy and Montana.
That's correct.
So you would have walked right past it on the opposite side of the street?
I was on the opposite side of the street at that point. As I said, the dog crossed the street with myself and my dog, so at that point I was on the opposite side of the street.
All right. And do you recall approximately where you were when you first saw the police car?
That was before Gorham, so that was between Dorothy and Gorham that I first saw the police officer and called out to him.
Well, now thinking back to where you were, can you tell us where that was in relationship to the scene of these homicides?
Well, I don't know the exact scene of the homicide, not having really been there or seen anything connected with that. So I don't know the exact spot or anything like that. I know I was on the other side of the street. I was approaching Gorham. I wasn't at Gorham yet. And the police officer was on the other side of the street.
All right. And was the police officer moving, or was the car parked there, or what?
Oh, the police officer was moving until I stopped him.
All right, you flagged him down,
Yes, I did.
then he pulled a U-turn?
I spoke to him from that other side of Bundy. He was on the other side of the street, and I spoke to him, and since he was on the driver's side, I was able to communicate with him that way. I assumed that he made a U-turn because he ended up following me and the dog to Montana, but so I assume that that's what happened.
So the U-turn then would have been after you spoke to him? Initially, you spoke to him while he was just stopped in the middle of the street?
Initially, I spoke to him again. I don't know whether he made a U-turn, if he pulled into a driveway or what.
But you spoke to him and then he turned and proceeded in the
Yes,
opposite direction?
I continued. I actually crossed the street again. Bundy winds around, and I continued in a straight line back to Montana and Bundy.
Okay. And this was a normal black and white patrol car?
Yes,
LAPD?
yes,
Was the officer in uniform?
yes,
And it was a male officer?
yes, it was.
And you don't remember his name, do you?
I never found out his name. He was a young black officer. I don't know his name.
Right. And the officer at some point told you that he would contact animal control?
Yes, at that point, he told me that he would contact animal control. So I assumed that he would then follow the dog and see where the dog led, and if necessary, take the dog. But as I said, the dog continued to follow us. It wouldn't leave my side at that point.
Did he take your name?
Not at that point. Initially, he didn't. After, again, it's a kind of, I guess, ended up being kind of a procession with myself and my dog, followed by the Akita, and then followed by the officer. And this led all the way back to Bundy in Montana. I turned right on Montana to head home, and with the dog still following me, he pulled into a driveway near my house, and we spoke again. And at that time, I gave him my address, my name, address, and phone number, and we agreed that I would continue to hold on to the dog, since that seemed to be what the dog wanted to do, and he would take care of contacting animal control.
Excellent. Did he observe the dog at that point?
I don't know.
Did you make any mention to him of the blood on the dog's legs or paws?
I just mentioned that the dog appeared to be lost. I did not make any mention of blood or anything like that at that time.
Now, you indicate you got home then about 11:05?
That's correct.
Had the dog, the Akita dog, stopped barking by that time?
Yeah, the dog seemed to have calmed down considerably by that time. It followed me right up the stairs, right to my front door.
Right. And then you indicated at what time, about 11:30, 11:40, you turned the dog over to your neighbor, Shukru?
That's correct. Yeah, it was around 11:40.
11:40?
All right. Yeah, around 11. That's approximately the time, as best as I can recall.
Now, you indicated Mr. Shukru at that point?
Shukru's his first name.
What is his last name?
I don't know his last name.
Okay, I'll refer to him as Shukru then. Did he leave immediately to take the dog for a walk?
Not immediately, because we discussed what to do. He was concerned about going to work the next day and what to do about the dog. And so we discussed the various options, because we still could have tried to take the dog back to animal control at that point. But he's a very responsible person, and I knew the dog would be in good hands, so we discussed what to do. And what we decided at that point with it was that he would hold on to the dog for the night. If I got up early enough in the morning, I would get the dog from him before he left for work. If he didn't, he would tie the dog up in our courtyard outside that morning, and then therefore that morning I could walk the dog back again and put up posters trying to find the dog's owner. That's what we had agreed at that point. So there was some discussion at that point before I gave him the dog.
Did he take the dog then back to his apartment?
No, he took the dog for a walk at that point. He left with the dog through our apartment's back entrance and that was the last I saw of the dog. When he left with the dog through the back entrance, my wife and I continued to talk to his wife Bettina for a bit, and then went upstairs to go to bed.
All right. So at no time then did he take the dog back to his apartment?
I didn't see him go into the apartment at that point. I saw him, again, the last I saw was when he walked off with the dog. And
To
I
take
went
the
to bed.
dog for a walk?
Yeah.
And did his wife go with him?
No, at first he went off by himself, and we spoke to the wife.
Now, were you interviewed by the officers of the Los Angeles Police Department about these events shortly after?
Well, that morning, at 5 a.m., there was a pounding on my door, and my dog started barking, and I got up, still in my underwear, and went to the door, and there were two detectives outside, and I inquired what they wanted, and they said that they wanted to talk to me about the dog in connection with a homicide. So I asked them to wait outside, and I got dressed and woke up my wife and explained to her what was going on.
All right. And have you seen a statement that they obtained from you?
No, I have
at that time? Could I show that to you?
Absolutely.
May I approach?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Schwab, the statement indicates that you told the officers you first encountered the Akita dog at 11:15 p.m. Is that correct?
Is which correct?
Is that what the statement
The
says?
statement says that, yes.
All right. Is that what you told the officers?
I was trying to remember at that point, and at one point I did mention 11:15. Again, it was 5 a.m. in the morning, and I was very confused at that point as to what time all of this occurred. Unlike here and now, the officer didn't, say, well, what time did you leave the house? What time did you get here? What time did you get there? I was trying to remember, and I couldn't remember whether the whole thing had started at 10:30 or 11 o'clock or any of that, and I was trying to remember. I said a couple of things. This is obviously the one he wrote down.
All right. So at that time, you did tell them it was 11:15 p.m. when you first encountered.
That was one of the times that I'd mentioned in talking to them at that point, yeah.
And as you've reconstructed it, you've been able to identify that time? with
Yes, and
greater precision?
I was aware prior to this that is incorrect. I even called the police department back to explain to them that having remembered what had happened, at not being 5 a.m. anymore, and being able to remember what I did that night, I called the police to inform them that I knew that this time is incorrect, and that I recalled better what time it was because I knew better what time I had left the house and what time this whole incident started.
And the statement also indicates that when you encountered the dog, it was obviously lost, running from house to house, barking. Is that correct?
First of all, it doesn't say anything about barking here. It incorrectly says that it's Dundee and Dorothy, not Bundy. And despite the fact that it says it was running from house to house, that's not the way it happened.
And that's not what you told them?
I tried to explain, as I've explained here, about the dog going from house to house, barking at the doors. I don't recall ever saying that the dog was running, because the dog was at no time while it was in my possession running. As I said previously, the dog was very dehydrated. It was not expending a lot of energy. It was not running around at all. It was doing a good amount of barking.
Thank you. I have nothing further. One more question. Did any officers come back to prepare a supplemental report after they spoke to you to correct any of these errors?
No one spoke to me after that in connection with this at all. I spoke to those two detectives, and the next that I knew about or relative to any of this was when I received my subpoena. A detective came to my apartment to issue me a subpoena, That was the next time that I spoke to anyone in person about any of this from the police department.
Thank you. Nothing further. Approve that.
Ms. Clark, do you have any questions on redirect?
Very briefly, Your Honor. The detectives that you spoke to, sir, do you see them here in court?
I don't, again, it was 5 a.m., so I don't recall who they were. I'm sorry.
Were you pretty tired at the time you spoke to them?
I was very tired when I spoke to them. It was quite abrupt, and it was scary to find out that that this was connected to a homicide in some way. So I was quite agitated. My wife was very upset. Bettina and Shukru were very upset. And it was 5 a.m. and it was still relatively dark out.
So do you think that that agitation and that confusion at being confronted with a traumatic event at 5 in the morning had something to do with the accuracy of the statements you may have given them at the time?
Absolutely. I was very confused at the time, and I know that the things, especially relative to time, that I said to the officers was completely inaccurate. I was trying very hard to remember at that time, and it was still coming to me. I was trying to fix in my head when the time was. It wasn't like I had a minute to think or to try to remember what I did or what day of the week it was. Again, as I've told the court, I have a routine with my dog that differs from on the weekends than it does during the weekdays. And I was trying to remember at what time I left the house, and was at that point was even unsure whether I had left the house at 11:30 or 11 o'clock or 10:30. I wasn't sure at that point what time I had left the house.
Were you even sure of what day of the week it was when you were talking to them?
I was not clear at what time or what. Again, having woken up in the middle of the night, I wasn't sure whether it was a weekday or a weekend, especially being, in this case, it was Sunday leading into Monday. So it was a weekday, but the previous night was still the weekend.
And you didn't remember that at the time they spoke to you?
No.
Was this a real lengthy interview you had with them at 5 in the morning, or?
It was incredibly brief.
Incredibly brief?
Yeah, it was again, the biggest thing that I remember was that they said it was connected to a homicide, and at first I was going to have them come into the house, but then I saw that they were there with Bettina and Shukru, and my wife wasn't dressed yet, so then I said, okay, let's go downstairs to the court, the pool area of our building and discuss it there.
And did they speak to you separately?
No.
Who was with you?
My wife was with me, Bettina and Shukru were there, and there were the two detectives.
And did they speak to you first or to Bettina and Shukru first?
Well, Bettina and Shukru were already there. They were with the detectives. And
Well, at the time that you went down to speak to the detectives, were they speaking also, or was it just you?
there was some discussion. My wife was asking questions. I was asking questions because, we didn't know what was going on.
You were asking questions of the police.
Yes.
But when they were asking questions of you, were you the only one speaking?
No, I was not.
Who else was speaking?
Again, this is difficult for me because it was 5 o'clock in the morning. I just remember that my wife had asked the police officer some questions, and I had started to reconstruct what time it was. And at first I said I started with 11:30, and then my wife said no, you were home by then, and that was correct. And so then I was saying, well, maybe it was 11:15. I wasn't sure. I was still at that point trying to reconstruct what had happened, but then the police officer moved on to other questions or other matters. It was very brief.
I'm sorry, how long was the conversation you had with the police officers?
I would say between 5 and 10 minutes, tops.
I have nothing further.
Mr. Ullman?
Nothing further.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
I'm going to remind you, please do not discuss your testimony with anyone but the lawyers in this matter until you've been completely excused, but you are free to step down.
Thank you.
I did want to make one statement to the lawyers. with regard to the request for sidebar conferences. And traditionally, a sidebar conference is of the nature that we discuss things like what time a witness is going to be available. Is there some particular need on the part of the lawyers to vary from the court hours or something of that nature? I did grant a sidebar conference this morning at the request of the prosecution, probably for the kind of a matter that was not of the type that this court traditionally holds the sidebar kind of conferences for. For that reason, I did request that the court reporter prepare the transcript of that sidebar conference. Rose, do you know if that's completed?
They're working right now, we'll be ready by noon.
All right. So that the transcript of that proceeding will be available to the attorneys and other interested parties as soon as it's finished, and it should be about noon. And I would ask the lawyers that unless we're dealing with matters concerning scheduling or things of that nature, that that will not be done at the sidebar. Now, would this be an appropriate time? I think it would to open the envelope that was delivered to the court.
You know, I have civilian witnesses.
We will object there and open the envelope. Do not believe that we.
Your Honor, we don't probably need to have conferences at this point concerning that matter. I have civilian witnesses present who are ready to testify. And if we could, I'd appreciate it if we could take their testimony rather than hold them here.
Well, that's fine. With regard to this particular envelope, then, is there going to be some written authorities delivered or some kind of a request done either to open it or not open it?
Yes, Your Honor, there'll be requests not to open it, that is sealed under the direction of the presiding judge in the Superior Court, under the direction of Judge Delbert Wong. It is evidence that is in possession of the defense, that we have no obligation to disclose, and do not disclose until we deal with the appropriate time.
All right, well, it was the presiding judge of the Superior Court that directed this court to open that envelope, in fact, on the record. However, the Superior Court really doesn't appear that they actually had jurisdiction over this matter, which is why it was given to us in the first place. However, I will not do anything with that envelope in terms of opening it until such time as appropriate briefs or other information is made available to the court.
For the record, Judge Mills was not party to any of these proceedings.
No, I know, it was Judge Ito.
And to the best of my knowledge, since all these matters were under seal, were sealed immediately, Judge Mills does not have direct knowledge as to this.
I don't know what he knows or what he doesn't know, but I will consider any authorities that you want to offer to the court with regard to what happens to that. I won't do anything but have the clerk maintain it at this
That's all
point.
it was.
Your Honor, how are we going to file points and authorities concerning the opening of that envelope when this was obviously evidence submitted by the defense of which we have no knowledge? Judge Ito is apparently the only judge that knows anything about it other than the defense. So basically, the court is saying to the defense to write a brief concerning its objection to the opening of an envelope to which we cannot respond because we do not have any information as to how that envelope came to the possession of the Superior Court, who put the evidence into that envelope, what kind of evidence it is, when it was recovered, how, from where.
Well,
how can we possibly...
all I'm prepared to tell you is that Judge Delbert Wong, who is a retired judge of the Superior Court, acted as a special master in connection with that and recovered whatever that item is. Where and when or what it is, I do not know.
Generally, that should be item or items.
Item or items, correct, I don't know. And beyond that, and I think this is a novel situation for, I know it's a novel situation for me and perhaps for you as well. Judge Mills made some comment that suggested that since there is a right of reciprocal discovery and that there's been requests for discovery from both sides, that it would perhaps be appropriate that that item be opened in open court. Now, as I say, I'm willing to hold off at this particular point in time.
That's course of action.
But I'm not saying that that is going to remain indefinite in terms of the opening of that envelope. Okay. You call your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. People call Shukru Bastevi.
Raise your right hand, please.
You solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give the cause now pending before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, the truth, so help you God. Please be seated. State and spell your name for the record.
Shukru Boztepe, Sukruboztepe.
You may inquire.
Thank you. May I have a moment, Your Honor? Mr. Boztepe, as of June the 12th, 1994, can you tell us in general where you were living? You don't have to give the exact address.
On Montana Avenue between Bundy and Selwyn Center.
And how far from the intersection of Bundy and Dorothy was that?
500 or 600 feet.
And is that a home or is that an apartment building?
Where I live,
Yes.
it's an apartment building.
Were you living there as of June the 12th, 1994?
Yes.
On that night, that was a Sunday night, had you gone out at some point?
Yes.
When did you come home?
I came home 11:40.
And when you got back, did you notice anything unusual?
Yeah, our upstairs neighbor Steven was sitting in the our patio area with his wife and a big white dog.
Were you alone that night when you came home?
Yes, I did. Yes.
Do you have a wife?
Yes.
Where was she when you came home?
She was in our house.
So when you got home at about 11:40, you were alone at that time.
Yes.
Where was it that you saw your neighbor with the big white dog?
Just in front of our window almost. We have a swimming pool and everybody is looking at the swimming pool, so they were sitting on the chair in front of our window.
So that was the pool area.
Yeah.
Had you ever seen that dog before?
No.
What was the name of your neighbor who you saw with that dog at about 11:40?
Steven.
Steve?
Steven.
Do you know his last name?
Schwab, I guess. I don't know how to pronounce it.
And who was Stephen with anybody besides the dog?
With his wife Linda.
Linda?
Uh-huh.
Is that yes?
Yes.
When you saw him with that dog, that big white dog you'd never seen before, what did you do?
I asked whose dog is this, and they answered.
And based on what they told you, what did you do?
Can you repeat it, please?
Yeah. You asked them whose dog it was.
Yeah.
And they gave you an answer.
Yeah, they said that.
You don't have to tell me what they said.
Okay.
You can just tell me what you did after they told you that.
I came into my apartment and woke my wife up to show off the dog. And we started to talk about what should we do about the dog. Should we go to animal shelter or should we keep?
What did you decide to do?
We decided to keep the dog overnight and then call the animal shelter tomorrow morning and give it to the animal shelter.
So did you take the dog into your apartment?
Yes.
Excuse me, one moment, please. What happened when you took the dog back to your apartment?
Dog was so nervous running around in the house, going to the window, going to the door, and we didn't feel comfortable with such a big dog in our apartment overnight, and we decided to take the dog for a walk.
How was the dog behaving when it was inside your apartment?
Very nervous, and
Can you describe what you mean by that?
yeah, as I told, I mean, running in the house, going to back and forth, and we don't have a big house, so dog was going to the window, scratching the door, smelling under the door, and trying to go out, I guess.
Well, did you notice anything unusual about the way the dog looked?
Can you tell me again?
Anything about its body? Anything on it that you saw?
There was red spots on the dog, on dog's feet, all of them.
All four of them?
Yeah,
What about on the legs?
legs too.
And what did that red spots look like? Those red spots look like to you?
Blood.
So the dog was acting nervous, and so what did you want to do?
We wanted to take the dog for a walk, so maybe we thought that we can find the owner.
How did you plan to walk the dog so that you could find the owner?
Steven said that he found the dog around Bundy and Dorothy, and we decided to take for a walk to that direction. And actually, we just let the dog lead us.
So you let the dog lead you?
Mm-hmm.
Was that yes?
Yes. Sorry.
And was the dog on a leash?
Yes.
What time was it when you left your apartment with the dog?
Very much around 12 o'clock.
You mean midnight?
Yeah.
Did you go alone or did you bring your wife?
With my wife.
When you got out of the apartment building area, did you let the dog go in front of you?
Yes.
And where did the dog lead you?
South to Bundy.
And then where?
And then dog passed across the street to Bundy, cross the street to the other side, and then start to pull me a lot harder than it was before. And then we walked for a while, and then he stopped, turned right, and just stopped. I turned right too.
So as you proceeded southbound on Bundy, the dog seemed to pull harder and harder,
Yes,
and then it stopped at some point on the sidewalk?
yes.
The point on the sidewalk where it stopped, was there a path of any kind
Yes, it was a path to a house.
to the house?
Mm-hmm.
Is
Yes.
that yes?
Yes.
At that point where the dog stopped and looked to the right up that path leading to the house, how far was that from your house, your apartment?
600 feet.
So when the dog stopped at that point on the sidewalk and looked to his right up the path, what did you do?
dog was just in front of me and I had to stop too. I turned right. It wasn't.
It was not?
It was not.
Was it dark?
It was dark.
Can you describe what else you saw in that area where you saw the woman?
There was a lot of blood. I could see only from the street light, which comes from behind. So it was pretty dark. And I have seen only for a quick moment, and I just turned around and never looked at it again.
If the dog had not stopped where it did, would you have looked up the path and seen her?
No,
Was there any light coming from the house near where you saw her lying?
no,
Was there any light coming from the, excuse me, strike that. If you recall, was there a gate anywhere near where you saw the woman?
that I don't remember. I haven't seen the gate. I've just looked very low level, exactly where she was laying. So.
After you saw that, sir, did you go walking up the path towards where the woman was lying?
No.
What did you do?
I tell my wife that there is a dead person there and we should call 911. We cross the street, run to a house to call 911. We knocked the door, nobody was there. And there was a lady who is walking to her car. We stopped her and told that she should call 911. And she said that she will call from the phone box, and she left. We didn't count on her, and we went to another house, next house, to the opposite side of the street. We knocked the door, and there was an old gentleman there. We tell him to call 911, and he called 911, and in, I guess, 2 minutes, the police car came.
Between the time that you saw the woman lying there and the time that the police came, did anyone walk up the sidewalk and up the path to approach where she was lying?
No,
Did the dog do that? Go up to where she was lying down?
no.
What did the dog do after you both saw the body?
Dog was pretty calm. I mean, I pulled the dog. Dog came with us.
When the dog looked in the direction of the woman, did it bark?
No.
I have here a series of photographs. At the moment, I'm only going to be showing the one labeled B.
All right.
I'd ask that they be marked as people's 5
Yes.
collectively. Sir, I'm showing you people's 5 for identification. Can you tell me if you recognize the scene depicted in photograph B?
Yes.
Can you tell us what that is?
This is exactly what I saw.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Can you speak up, sir?
This is exactly what I saw in that night.
Okay, is that the woman that you saw?
Yes,
And that's the condition in which you saw her?
yes,
And is that the path that you described for us?
yes.
I have nothing further.
Mr. Ullman?
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Bostep, when you walked the dog back to Bundy and proceeded south, was there any traffic? Did you encounter any automobiles?
Not that I remember. It was so quiet,
Street was quiet and empty.
very empty.
You indicated you saw a lot of blood in the area of the pathway that the dog led you to.
Yes,
Did you observe paw prints or dog trackings in that blood?
I didn't see.
Okay. Did you make any attempt to look at the pattern of the blood
No.
that you saw?
No.
You just were aware that there was blood there.
Yes, yes.
When you first received the dog from Mr. Schwa, did you immediately leave with the dog to go for a walk?
No, we took the dog inside of the house and we wanted to keep the dog for overnight, and then we understood that we couldn't do it.
Okay, so the first time you actually took the dog out on a leash for a walk was after you had kept it in your house for
For a couple of minutes.
a couple of minutes?
Yes,
How long?
3 minutes, I can say 4 minutes.
Thank you, nothing further.
Ms. Clark, anything else?
Just one question. Was your wife with you when you went for the walk with the big white dog and saw the woman lying on the path?
Yes,
I have nothing further.
Anything further from the defense? You may step down. I want to remind you, sir, please do not discuss your testimony with anyone but the lawyers until you have been completely excused from this action. Thank you.
People called Bettina Rasmussen?
Face the clerk. Raise your right hand, please.
You solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in the cause now pending before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and what we got. Yes. State and spell your name for the record.
Bettina, my surname, Rasmussen.
Mankler.
Thank you. Ms. Rasmussen, are you married to Shukru Bostepi?
Yes,
And is that the man who just left this court as you came in?
yes,
Directing your attention to the night of June the 12th, 1994, did you go with him for a walk that night
yes,
with a dog?
yes.
And was that a dog that you had not previously seen before that night?
I never seen it before.
Pardon?
I never seen it before.
Do you recall where the dog led you?
It took us down of Bundy, of left side from Montana, and suddenly it dragged and somehow wanted to go to the other side of the road, and we was following, and suddenly on the other side it stopped and turned in, looked at the walkway. And my husband is turning the same way, and he's saying to me, "There's a body, dead body." And I'm looking, and I'm turning around very fast again.
And you saw it as well?
Yeah,
Did either of you walk up the path to where you saw the woman's body?
no,
Did the dog do that?
no.
I'm going to show you very briefly a photograph that's contained on People's 5 labeled B, and I'd like for you to tell me, if you could, if this is a scene you saw that night with your husband.
I don't remember it that way.
What's different about this photograph that you remember?
I felt it was closer on the other side of the gate, and I could see her face. It's what I remember.
This looks farther away to you.
Yeah, but I didn't stand this way. I was more on the right side.
You were standing off to an angle.
Yeah,
So if this photograph was taken from a different position than you saw, it would look different.
Objection.
Maybe.
Also speculation.
Sustain as to the form of the question.
You were not standing directly at the beginning of the path leading up to where you saw the woman.
no. My husband and the dog were standing there, and I came like a little bit. I was near side and more behind, more to right side.
You were off to the right.
Yeah,
But other than that, does this look like the scene that you saw?
yeah.
Between the time that you, strike that. Did you and your husband attempt to get the police?
I couldn't hear you.
Did you and your husband attempt to get the police?
Yeah,
Did you see the police arrive?
yeah.
Between the time that you saw the woman and you saw the police arrive, did anyone go up that path toward where she was?
No,
That night, can you describe the lighting in the area where you saw the woman?
it was very dark except those street light which is kind of yellow, and I guess it was on the other side of Bundy, so it was like very dark and like this yellow lighting, orange lighting, so it's not very bright. It was very dark.
Were there any lights on the building, the exterior of the building that you saw her body next to?
I don't know the building, but the walkway, I don't remember if there was any light.
Very dark there?
Very dark.
Did you see any other body lying on the ground besides the woman?
No, which I turned around very fast.
Now, since that night, have you driven by that location?
A couple of times, yeah.
Did you notice what the lighting was like in the pathway on those other nights after you saw the woman's body?
There's 2 lights now.
There's 2 lights that you've seen since then?
Yeah.
Where?
One in the middle of the walkway and one around the gate where you're opening the gate.
When you say the gate by which you saw the woman's body?
Yeah,
And are those lights bright?
not very bright. It's what's called dim or something. It's not very bright. I don't know what it's called.
But you did not see those lights on the night that you saw the woman?
No,
Had you ever gone by that location before that night?
a couple of times, a long time ago. Normally I'm not going on that way.
I'm sorry?
Normally I'm not walking on that way, but like a couple of years ago, I've been passing by at night time.
And do you recall what the lighting was like on those nights at that location?
I never knew about the house, and I've just been walking there to get home.
So you didn't pay attention before that night?
No.
I have nothing further.
Mr. Ullman.
Thank you. Ms. Rasmussen, you indicated when you looked at the photograph marked Exhibit 5 that the body seemed closer to you when you saw it that night?
Yeah.
Closer to you in terms of where you were standing on the sidewalk?
I saw it for such a short time, so what I remember when I'm thinking about it is that it was a kind of closer to me on the other side of the gate. It's what I remember. But I saw it such a short time. It was such a big shock.
And now in the photograph, it appears further back from the gate?
Yeah.
Did you observe any paw prints in the blood that you saw on the sidewalk?
That night?
Yes.
No.
Did you look at the pattern of the blood that you saw?
That night I just looked at it, understood what it was, and I turned around very fast. So
Thank you very much. No further questions. Can you tell us whether the blood that you observed appeared to be still damp or wet, or was it dry
that night,
when you arrived at the scene?
I was remembering as like it was coming down like a river. I mean, I saw it, and then I saw the body, and I remember like I saw like it didn't float, but like it looked like it was on the way down of the walkway.
It looked as though it had flowed toward the sidewalk,
Yeah,
but you didn't see any movement in the blood at that time.
I saw it maybe a half second, and I never looked back again. So I have no idea.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Ms. Clark, anything further?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. I'm going to remind you, please do not discuss your testimony with anyone until you've been completely excused from this matter. Thank you very much.
With respect to the remaining witnesses, Your Honor, the defense had just indicated to us this morning that there was going to be some discovery pertaining to them that they were going to give us. They have not yet given it to us. Until I receive that,
That's,
excuse me.
Well, I'll let you speak in a minute, Mr. Shapiro.
Until I am able to view that information, I will not be able to examine the witnesses that are scheduled for the balance of the day.
So are you, in essence, telling me that you've run out of witnesses at this point?
Well, no, not really, Ron. The witnesses, I can bring them in. I haven't really run out of them, but I can't present their testimony until I know what it was, what it is that counsel's purporting to give me. I have no idea what he turned over.
Right.
He did turn it over. I haven't seen it myself.
Mr. Shapiro, you wanted to say something.
The last break, I informed Mr. Hodgman that we had 2 micro cassettes of interviews with witnesses that the people had on the witness list. We wanted to make those available, and I thought that arrangements were made to give those to the members of the police department so that they could take recording. In any event, we have them here. These are our originals, so long as our investigator can be with them and play them, they are free to record and make their witness.
So we have not yet received the tapes at this point.
I think we attempted to, but for some reason there was a lack of communication and how it should be delivered.
All right, so what you're saying is you have 2 half-hour, did you say half-hour cassettes?
Half-hour micro cassette tapes of witness interviews.
All right. Now, Ms. Clark, do you have the ability to play those
I have
over?
a tape recorder that I will provide to play.
All right. Now,
I'm sorry, there are 3 tapes. There are 3 tapes of interviews of 2 people.
Ms. Clark, what is your request at this time?
Not hearing the tapes, I don't even know what to say. If I may listen to the tapes, I can at least present one witness. I don't know until I hear them, Your Honor. I don't know how long these tapes will take to listen to.
Now, you had first indicated there were 2 half-hour tapes. Now that there's 3, is it 3 half-hour tapes?
No, there are 2 conversations, each approximately a half hour in length. One takes up 2 tapes, each on one side only. One takes up a portion of one side.
All right. Well, At this point in time, we'll take the noon recess, and you can listen to those tapes and make whatever appropriate requests when we return at 1:30.
Thank you very much, Jonathan.
All right, we're once again on the record in the case of People versus Simpson. The defendant is present with counsel. The people are represented.
Yes, Your Honor. With respect to the matter concerning the tapes, I have to indicate to the court that by the time the micro cassette was converted to a regular cassette, which is the only thing we can play and copy, it was already about 1:45. So we have not had an opportunity to listen to the tape. However, I listened to one of the tapes, and it would appear that the date of the recording was June 14th. And we only just received discovery, well, the court was present when we finally got the tapes in our hands about an hour and a half ago. Although discovery obviously could have been made sooner, it was not, and I cannot in good conscience proceed forward with a witness being unprepared in this fashion. I'm going to have to listen to the tape as to each witness. Furthermore, there are other matters that I think we should take up in chambers. And with respect to discovery, I have here discovery concerning the events that transpired in Chicago involved in this investigation, numbered pages CH1 through 259, and they also include one cassette tape. And I'm turning it over to the defense in the middle envelope this time.
All right, with reference to your request to have a conference in chambers, can you give the court some indication as to what subject matter you wish to discuss in chambers?
No, Your Honor, I cannot. But it is urgent. It is urgent that I speak to the court on the record in chambers. I think it would be imprudent of me to address this matter in court.
All right, then I will go in chambers. If I make a determination immediately on, in terms of that discussion, that it's one that should be in open court, then we will immediately return to the open court.
Thank you very much.
We also have a matter to discuss, but in open court.
Do you want to do that now?
Yes, it's got to be discussed in court.
Remember, we had filed an ex parte application to be permitted material witness visits with Mr. Simpson in the attorney rooms and
Yes.
over the weekends, and Your Honor entered that order. I was contacted by Deputy Cook at the Sheriff's Department, and he said that he wanted to have a face-to-face meeting with us on Tuesday, and until we could have that meeting, we would not be permitted to have witness visits with Mr. Simpson over the weekend. And as you know, the preliminary hearing will be resuming on Tuesday, and it's essential that we be permitted to meet with Mr. Simpson to prepare a defense.
All right, do you have the telephone number for this particular deputy?
Yes, I'll do that.
And can we, is that's
That's part of it.
okay. Can we contact him and perhaps tell him that I'd like him to come down as soon as possible to the courtroom? Okay. Is there anything beyond
No, that was
that?
it.
All right, then I will see counsel with the reporter in chambers.
Thank you.
Versus Simpson, the defendant is present with counsel. The people are represented. At this time, Ms. Clark, you've indicated to the court that you need additional time in order to listen to those tapes in order to be prepared to present additional witnesses.
Yes, Your Honor.
And it's my understanding that you're requesting that the court adjourn these proceedings until Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock. Is that
Yes.
correct? All right. Any objection from the defense?
We have no objection, but we want to indicate that we are not waiving our right to speak.
Yes, I certainly understand that, and please be assured that the court is devoting its full attention to this matter and no others.
We have no doubt about that. I just want to protect our rights.
All right. I would also state that there have been certain people's exhibits that have been marked this morning for evidence. They have not been introduced into evidence, and at this time they are in the custody of the clerk, and there will be no access to any one until such time as they are received and until a ruling is ultimately made as to the appropriate access for those exhibits. But at this time, they will remain in the custody of the court clerk. All right, everyone have a pleasant holiday, and we will see you all bright and early on Tuesday morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.